treat the people that you are meeting for the very first time differently than people that have purchased from you for the 100th time. Yeah. Always treat them differently, speak to them differently, and definitely use just the fundamentals of pulling individuals down the funnel, making them loyalists, and doing it right. Don't ever set it, forget it, and spray and pray. That's never a good practice.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of the e-commerce traffic and conversion podcast. I'm Scott Brandley, and I'm here with my co-host DJ Sprague and our special guest today, Adam Ortman. Welcome, Adam.
Happy to be here, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you, and I get the pleasure of introducing you. So Adam is a marketing author, consumer psychologist, and the president and founder of Kinetic 319, a leading marketing and advertising agency headquartered in Denver, Colorado. We love Denver. The agency offers full funnel marketing campaigns, fusing cutting edge practices in consumer psychology to help businesses transcend mediums and resonate with global audiences. That's a lot of stuff, and we're going to get into what that means.
It's a bit of a mouthful, I agree, but we love marketing, and that's what it boils down to.
So along that idea, and consumer psychology, tell us your background and how you got into psychology and marketing overall.
Yeah, from an early age, always knew that I wanted to get into the business world in some way, shape, or form. Actually, in a prior life, I was a rescue diver for the city of Long Beach as a scuba diver. You could believe that. After some of those instances, you kind of have a realization that you say, maybe this life isn't for me, and let's go to college and crack the books on things. Obviously, my undergrad is business administration marketing, and I always knew that I wanted more, and I wanted the addition of that communications level, that consumer psychology level, and I completely ate it up, completely. And I love the idea of how we can understand how customers really live their lives and their purchase behaviors and their interests, their motivations, their priorities, and how you can align a brand, their services and offerings and products seamlessly into that individual's life. And it's really that marriage that makes clients exercising marketing extremely successful. So I've always known that I wanted to get into marketing. So I was fortunate enough, because there's a lot of people when they're 17, 18 years old that have no idea what they want to do with their lives. So I started very early. I started my own agency. I started at an agency very early on, around 18 years old. And from there, you're going through the rigor, and you're the guy that's building out 1 million keywords for your Halloween client at the time, and you're on Yahoo ads, and that was way back then. And going through the years, I've been all agency and really learning about the digital, learning about the traditional client services, financial strategies with marketing, etc. And going out on my own, I really wanted to build a relationship first agency, because I realized that was something that was inherently missing within our industry. So not only am I bringing a lot of the consumer psychology to the table that I love, but also my other love is building relationships and really understanding our clients' as business, so that we can come to the table with supplemental experience and supplemental skills that businesses may not have. And that's really what Kinetic 319 is.
Fantastic. Filling that gap, that void. Coincidentally, you and I were neighbors. I lived in Huntington Beach and Catalina Island. And
very nice. I trained and did a lot of work off of Catalina Island.
The Casino Point there, right?
Yep. Gorgeous place.
I lived in that bar.
The biggest grouper you'll ever see in the world are in Catalina's national parks.
Yep. You got it. That barge right on the other side of the point? That's where I lived. I was a marine mechanic on that barge.
Amazing. We probably crossed paths at some point.
I'm sure we did. What a small world. And now we're both in the Rocky Mountains. Explain exactly what your definition of behavioral marketing is.
Sure. And I think I, just briefly touched on it, but it's really that ability for brands to have intimate knowledge about their customers and understanding their customers. We build at Kinetic 319, we build personas for all of our clients, and understanding that persona breaks down who this person is, what are their priorities, both from other businesses, other brands that they may be loyal to, how do they consume media, What are some areas of interest for them? Do they use the internet for news versus entertainment? So there's a lot of those types of variables that we use. But when it comes to behavioral marketing, it's about creating that profile and understanding how they behave. I mean, behavioral marketing, how do they literally behave? And how do you, as a brand and a partner with an agency like mine, how do you leverage the levers, the tactics, the strategies to meld the two? And so you see a lot of this in the technology world today. So audiences are a direct definition and representation of how you can leverage behavior in targeting your media while ensuring that you're telling your story appropriately from a brand perspective.
What tips or strategies do you have, for engaging online consumers using behavioral marketing?
I love the audience conversation. We were literally just talking about one today with one of my clients this morning. Data is incredibly important. So understanding the numbers and the stories that the numbers tell directly translates into actions that's happening in the real world as in, either online or even in traditional senses. So you understand how individuals are purchasing, you understand what blogs they're reading, you understand what videos they're watching on YouTube or influencers that they follow. And all of this information is incredibly useful because you can say, I want this, I don't want that when it comes to behavior. And when you start to segment out using these groups of behaviors, we're going to start referencing them as audiences now, you can start using these audiences who are grouped by their behaviors and start activating against them. And so a main enormous tip that I've seen when I do a lot of free audits, which we do offer free audits within my agency, is that there are so many brands today that aren't even scratching the surface to the power of audiences today that exist. So there are obviously out of the box audiences within Google, within Meta, within TikTok, etc., that allows, for example, like in-market audiences. There are behaviors that are occurring online that Google is registering as this person is in market for shampoo. That's a very easy one. So that is a direct representation and definition of behavioral targeting. So actions that they're taking online, we're able to activate against them and the brand can start messaging them closely. So use the audiences, even if they're out of the box audiences is fine. Obviously you can get a lot more sophisticated, but use your audiences, I would say, is number one. I'm going to give you two more, actually. Use your audiences. The other one is segment the data that you have at home. So your first party data is incredibly important. Even if you want to segment, just use one audience from your own segmented list, and that's the 80-20 rule. 80% of your revenue is going to come from your top 20% of your customers. So leverage that top 20% to give that information to Google and Meta and your other digital platforms to say, artificial intelligence and machine learning, go find me other 20%ers. So lookalike audiences are incredibly important, but that all stems from your ability to slice and dice your own first party data. So incredibly important. And then lastly is message to your client, or excuse me, your audiences appropriately. Your audiences should not get the same text ad. They should not get the same image ad. You should tailor your messaging strategy to the audience that you're talking to. There's a very specific example, one that I literally had with one of our Sephora brands this morning, is if you have a product that if you look at the directions on the back of your product and you say, if you use this daily, what is the average amount of time that it takes for a normal customer to go through that product? And this is what we would actually call as diminished remarketing is what we call this at Kinetic Dimension. And so if that product is diminished in 30 days and 60 days, you should be creating your audience pools for individuals that have purchased that product so that in 30 to 60 days, you can re-engage them to repurchase or refill, because you understand that from their behavior that they're probably running out of products and they need to repurchase. So even that messaging tactic layered on with audiences of, hey, you might be running out, let's repurchase. You don't want to use that same message as a new customer that's never heard from you before. So
right.
Very, very important is to use the audiences that are available to you, slice and dice your personal data, your first party data, and message to them appropriately.
Yeah. So true. I think the biggest mistake people make is one size fits all generic promotions, discounts,
Oof.
offers, campaigns. You're giving discounts to people that don't need them, people that buy at full price, and you're literally just giving money away. The other part of that is, giving people a discount as soon as they hit your website, and that's going to diminish your margin, right? They haven't even asked for a discount yet. That's a common thing. The other thing that I think a lot of people really don't leverage is looking at what is the product that your highest LTV customers first bought, right? There's usually a product, a gateway product that they bought.
It's the Costco rotisserie chicken.
There you go. And then
That's what it is.
promoting that, right? Because if you know what the highest LTV customers are buying or first bought, and then you make that the promotion item to new customers, chances are they're going to become LTV clients as well, high LTV clients. And it's just getting smart, right? It's using your data to understand where the value is, where the margins are, and then creating the appropriate promotions around those to the right audience versus one size fits all and literally, giving away margin you didn't have to give away.
Well, I mean, as a first step, DJ, just to add, you need to know what your customer LTV is.
Right.
A lot of companies don't know what that is. And
Right.
so that behavioral data, it's behavioral data.
Right.
How does that purchase data with your business, how does that translate into larger opportunities from a strategic perspective, not only as a business opportunity, but as a marketing strategy?
Recency, frequency, monetary value. And the other thing is, back to your point, is instead of offering a discount at 30 days, offer back to your 30-day use case, offer it at 40 days. Hey, you might be running low. Here's 10% off at 40 days because now they've gone beyond the 30-day repurchase period. So now that recency has been broken and they may be waning toward a different product. So to bring them back to that product, look at 10, 15 days past the normal purchase time and then offer a discount.
A lot of times your customers don't even know they're out, depending on your packaging.
Right, true. Or put them on a automatic fulfillment subscription, right?
Subscriptions is always a great model. Yeah, that's always a great thing to test. Always be testing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, great. So let's talk a little bit about the science of social commerce and, how's that transforming the customer journey?
I love the social commerce conversation. I was just working with a reporter at HubSpot, and she quoted me on this because we were kind of going back and forth on this social commerce perspective. And I really like social commerce because you get a lot of data at your disposal. You get a lot of behavioral data at your disposal. Who are people interacting with in regards to other people, in regards to brands? How are they shopping? You have a lot of that similar audience signal across the platforms. But when it comes to social media, you get a little bit more. And we were talking about social commerce specifically through the lens of FOMO, which is very interesting because fear of missing out is actually now a recorded psychological condition that was actually printed in a journal, I think about 10 years ago or so. And that idea of being able to see product or, a dress or, one of your friends is wearing a shirt and you see a bunch of your friends wearing the same shirt, or you see someone that you highly respect, like a celebrity or an influencer, and how that influences your purchase behavior. Because you start to get this fear of missing out, right? You start to understand that you're seeing this everywhere, and then you start to see ads for it. So it kind of builds this haste mentality, a snowballing effect that ultimately, ideally leads you to purchase. But social is an interesting realm because it is constantly evolving, right? So Instagram is still very, very popular. Facebook's now leaning more toward an older demographic, but you have TikTok and Snapchat and kind of just these other like threads that came out and these other social platforms. I mean, you're going to throw a stick in this place. You're going to hit 3 that are popping out of the ground in the next 10 years. So it's interesting to see it evolve in how brands interact with it and the options that the platforms start to bring forward to advertisers. It's fun because you have a lot of data and you have a lot of psychology that's happening, I think, behind the scenes that people don't really realize.
Yeah, a lot of nuanced levers that you're pulling within the subconscious or system one thinking that people aren't even aware of that they're reacting to, but yet they're extremely powerful and persuasive in getting people to engage and purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's also some instances where social can be used out, kind of thinking out of the box. So for example, for, a B2B commercial business, for example, that might not necessarily be inherently where your target is, but them as people are probably interacting. As an interesting tip, or maybe something for your listeners to try, is if you're looking at a medium like Facebook and you're dealing with an arena like B2B commercial services, for example, try maybe just going on to Facebook remarketing only and making it a high level message and making it, high top of funnel. It's low budget. Try that out, because we've seen some success where you're getting that reach and that frequency in mediums where people don't expect you to be. So you're kind of causing some attention to be grabbed, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, and that attention creates familiarity. Familiarity creates trust. So when they see a more direct response ad later on, when they're further down the funnel, they're going to click on that because of that trust and familiarity that's been created at the tofu level.
Absolutely. Fun stuff.
Like, what about offline? Do you do anything with banners, outdoor advertising, anything like that in your business?
Yeah, so we are full service in that way. So we're not purely digital. I know that we're talking about digital because I think that pulls a lot of the audience levers and behavior. You get a lot of data behind it, but traditional is still very much so alive. I'm actually having a lot more conversations in the last 2 years about traditional marketing than I have probably in the last 10. And that's because digital marketing is just getting dang expensive. And so people are looking for a wider reach at a lower CPM, and you're going to, linear TV is still king in that way. It has a higher price tag to enter, but you're still getting the most eyeballs for your dollar at the end of the day. But when it comes to other mediums like TV, like radio, like out of home, it's interesting to see what we're going through. I mean, out of home was one of the things that we were talking about even before us getting on this podcast. Was there's just a lot of technology that's coming into that space, because everyone has one of these sitting in their pockets. So you now have street level banners, out of home billboards that you might be in a mall, or you might be on the street, you might be in a subway, and those actually have beacon technologies in them. So you're able to see this device was within 60 feet of this banner, and then this device went to the website 10 days later. You can actually start to build a multi-touch attribution model with out-of-home signals. That is very sexy to me, and I love that stuff. Yeah,
it's interesting you mentioned that, because back in the late 90s, 2000s, I had a traditional ad agency, and we did obviously traditional TV, radio, print, outdoor. And we ran an outdoor campaign in a city that was about an hour away from our client in Utah. And they were getting very little business from there. So we bought about half a dozen prominent billboards. And then we started to look at the purchase data. And we increased purchases into that market by 23%.
Amazing.
Just outdoor alone, right? And just looking at the addresses of people that bought cars. And it was quite amazing that we're able to get a really high ROI, because outdoor advertising from a CPM perspective is extremely cheap. It's fractions of a penny, and yet the impact on that subconscious, people say, well, who reads billboards? People read billboards, whether you know it or not, whether you're even conscious of it or not. You're seeing that billboard. It was phenomenal to see the results, and a lot of people don't know, but the original Intel chip was launched in Denver, Colorado with an outdoor campaign. So the campaign was, does your computer have Intel inside? And another campaign was, ask for the Intel chip. And all of a sudden, the computer stores had people coming in saying, does it have the Intel chip? Now, before this, nobody in the world ever asked or cared what kind of chip was inside the computer, because there's no brand around the chip, right? The brand was around the computer. And all of a sudden, there's this consumer-driven demand for the Intel chip. And so they started putting the sticker Intel inside. And it started in Denver, Colorado with outdoor advertising.
Influence. Amazing.
Little advertising trivia.
And there's a lot of things that you can do that are just fun, right? I mean, if you have the budget and you have a strategy that is allowing for things, I personally worked with Olipop. This was about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. The Olipop has grown to be something extremely big, which is so exciting to see. And I'm so proud of that team. And we ran, when they were running their new Dr. Pepper flavor, like their version of the Dr. Pepper flavor, we basically, when I was running that campaign, we put billboards of Olipop all around the Dr. Pepper Museum in Texas, which was very fun to do. We actually surrounded the entire thing. But to your point, DJ, like it's not dead. And I think that while we all have data on our minds, we shouldn't lose sight of the fundamental impacts of marketing in general, whether they are print or whether they're out of home, whether they're digital. It comes down to attention and recognition at the end of the day. But traditional mediums are just getting crastier with how to put their data next to digital mediums as data sets, because brands, rightfully so, are requiring every budget that they have to be accountable. So that's really driving force behind making out of home, making TV, making your digital mediums. I want to know for every dollar I spend, what does that lead into sales? And with traditional mediums, it's a little bit more difficult, but there are ways around it.
Oh, there's absolutely ways. Yeah, we found all kinds of ways to measure that with traditional, just looking at market saturation, data and purchases by zip code, where those campaigns were running. Because, for example, with cable, right, you can run it on a zip code level. Then you go back 3 months, 6 months later and see what the sales were in that zip code where you ran cable spots that you never ran TV before. Same with outdoor, right? There's ways to do it, but attribution digitally, as you know, is getting more and more difficult too. So that's not nearly as easy or accurate for that matter. And there's a lot of fuzzy data in that. We have a digital marketing friend of ours that owns a digital agency, and he said, they had a client that the data showed that, it was 80 or 90% of the sales were coming through Google ads. And so they dropped their Facebook ads. They said, well, Facebook doesn't have the ROI.
Oh, no.
So they killed the Facebook, and guess what else happened?
It was probably an assister. Yeah.
The Google ads died. Why? Because the Facebook was creating the awareness that created the search terms in Google. So if you don't have the awareness on Facebook, even though you don't have any attribution, the Google ads.
Such a mistake. Yeah. Such a mistake.
It's an ecosystem, and people don't realize that they work together. And as you know, when you layer advertising mediums, TV with radio with digital, digital with TV, digital with outdoor, they work better together.
Compounding.
Yeah, compound, exactly. So that's a mistake a lot of people make. They just, I don't have any attribution, let's kill it. Well, then everything else dies too, because the awareness dies.
Yeah. We've asked this to several of our guests, but how do you see AI affecting e-commerce?
AI, there's a lot of people that are, I think, afraid of AI, and I don't think that they should be. AI is just a new hammer to hammer the nail, in my opinion. It's a tool that we should be using. It allows us to compute enormous amounts of data very, very quickly, and allows us to do our jobs more effectively. Just finding audiences. And let me preface, Google and Facebook and the others have been using AI for years. So AI is nothing new to them. We as consumers and common citizens are using the ChatGPTs and these language models for the first time, I would say, is new. So that's causing a lot of buzz. We've had bid strategies in Google for 8 years. Almost, right around probably 8 to 10 years by now. No one's been manually bidding for more than 10 years. And so when you're talking about digital mediums and how it comes to AI has been used for a long time now. It is just getting better. And that allows us to find your customers better. That allows you to tell the robots, the AI, a little bit more of what you want to do. For example, I want to go after my new customers. I want to go after my highest value purchasers. I just want to go after sales. So there are more sophisticated conversations that we're able to have with our campaigns through the settings and management of those campaigns than before. But I don't necessarily see it as a threat. I see it, like I said, I see it as a new tool. And when it comes to e-commerce specifically, it only makes us more effective because we're giving it a lot of information and it can do more things with the targeting as well as with the messaging in our ads.
Back to behavioral marketing. What are the three most important things that someone should be doing right now to leverage behavioral marketing?
Can I reuse my three that I gave you earlier? Can I revisit them? I will stick with those actually, because I think that they are the most important things that e-commerce brands could be doing with any type of behavioral marketing. And that is, you leveraging audiences. I cannot tell you how many times that I audit a campaign, look at other, look at even colleagues of mine and say, hey, come look at this. And I'll just, put my hands in my head and just fake it and just be very sad that they're not using any there's no audience segmentation, there's no sophistication in their marketing with top of funnel, mid funnel, bottom funnel types structures. So use audiences. Please, everyone that's listening, use your audiences because you're going to love them at the end of the day. The second one was to slice and dice your own data. So leverage your first party data and honestly just collect first party data, right? Talk to your customers. If you want to give them a small percentage off or whatever that is, or a small giveaway to collect their information, that's important because you can use them not only for targeting other new customers, but to continue to have a conversation with your existing customers. Survey them about your product, survey them about the messaging that you have for a future advertising campaign. There's so many types of people that get very excited to work, quote unquote, work with the brands that they're very loyal to and say, hey, I saw that in a survey that Nike gave me 6 months ago, and now I see it on TV. How amazing is that? That's such a cool thing for customers. So lean on them because they are extremely valuable to you. And then my last one, which I will reiterate, which is just to message your audiences appropriately. Treat the people that you are meeting for the very first time differently than people that have purchased from you for the 100th time. Yeah. Always treat them differently, speak to them differently, and definitely use just the fundamentals of pulling individuals down the funnel, making them loyalists and doing it right. Don't ever set it, forget it, and spray and pray. That's never a good practice.
Yeah, that makes sense. And honestly, if you're surveying your customers and getting feedback and having conversation, then by segment what their pain points are, and by funnel position what they're looking for, and what the friction points are, and the keywords they're dialing into, and specifically even competitors. And again, pain points, because your pain points become more refined as you move down the funnel, as you become more educated about the product, the category, the competitors, right? What you thought was a pain point in the beginning is a very different pain point maybe at the end, because it might be a different feature set or capability that you weren't aware of. So yes, that personalized messaging based on LTV, based on RFM, based on funnel position, based on how long they've been a customer, what products they're buying, what they're not buying.
Absolutely.
It's no critical. One size fits all. It just feels generic.
You're blowing money down the drain. That's what you're doing. You're flushing it down the drain. So for those that are listening, definitely follow us on our socials, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter, X, because we do a tip a week. So we're constantly providing marketing tips. So things like when you create a Google campaign, all of your keywords by default will be on broad match. You have to go in and turn this off. A lot of people don't understand that. There's a lot of very actionable tips that we are putting on every single week. So definitely follow us, because that we're talking about audiences here and how to craft them. Some of these themes are actually in those tips for later in the year.
Excellent. And tell us where they can find that.
Absolutely. So, at kinetic319.com or at kinetic319 is just our handle across all of our socials, but definitely visit us at kinetic319.com. We have a lot of publication works, not only that we produce ourselves. So we actually publish a lot of guides that are available all over the world. So we're selling guides not only on our website, but if you also find us on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, you'll see our published works. But we're also putting in a lot of content for our blog as well. So anything that is SEO, anything that is digital advertising, traditional advertising, some of the themes. We actually just finished a 6-part series on how to advertise during an election season, which is incredibly important because the parties are spending, I think the last stat I saw was $14 billion in the advertising space this year over the next, until November 4th, basically. So inventory that was relatively affordable last year, this year, don't necessarily think it's going to be the case, not only because the Olympics was this summer, but also the election back to back. So just take into consideration some of those things. And we have a lot of content that can help you navigate it.
Yeah, there is a defined inventory level, and media rates, whether they be digital or traditional, are all based on supply and demand.
And you have to be very crafty unless you have $20 billion to spend.
Right. Exactly.
Pocket change.
Yeah. There's pocket change. Exactly. Pennies.
So Scott hit Adam with the $1 million question.
All right. So at the end of every episode, we ask our guests what we call the $1 million question. So as an expert in your industry, what's one actionable strategy that you think would have the biggest impact on an e-commerce brand right now?
You did give me this before, so I did think about it. I don't want to hide behind the curtain with that. We've talked a lot about some really cool things on this podcast already, and I think that's really, really important. But one that we have not talked about, and one that I push for every one of our campaigns that we run at Kinetic 319, I learned it years ago, and I love it. And it's the 70-20-10 rule. And that's basically the always be testing rule of thumb. The 70% of your budgets, it doesn't matter what tactic or what platform you're running it on, 70% of your budget should be your tried and true. So things that are your workhorses in regards to performance. 20% should be looking at your workhorses a little bit differently. Use a different audience, use a different tweak of a setting or whatever it may be. And then 10%, use it as your wild hair brainstorm ideas. Because you're wanting to always find, especially in today's media and advertising world, you're constantly faced with evolution. There's new things happening all of the time. There's new platforms, there's new tools, there's new campaign sets. So use the 70-20-10 rule to always be testing and always be top, on the cutting edge of the new things that are coming out. And know that 10% is not always going to be successful. The 20% may not always be successful, but you are always challenging yourself as a brand to try new things and to push your brand to the next level, effectively and responsibly, I would say. So 70-20-10 is a fantastic rule that I would tell everybody.
Love that.
That's great advice. And, I'd add to that, layering on to what we were talking about earlier, when you're building your avatars or your personas, whatever you want to call them, make sure you're building them based on needs and pain points and fears and emotional desires, not necessarily on age, occupation, marital status, presence of children, what car they drive, unless you're selling cars. That really doesn't matter so much. What really matters is, what are their fears? What are their desires? What are their goals? What are their pain points? Get inside their head, and not so much demographics, but much more psychographics, because we're talking about behavioral marketing here and the psychology of marketing.
100%.
And it goes way beyond demographics. That's just scratching the surface. And I see so many avatars built on, Susie Smith, 32 years old, soccer mom, drives a minivan, homeowner. That doesn't tell me.
We have a whole section that is motivations and priorities, which is that whole, basically everything that you were just discussing. It's incredibly important to go beyond just the surface level, demographics. And again, psychographics is exactly what we're talking about today. So this has been great.
It's been wonderful, Adam. Thank you for joining us. And if you're interested in more psychology of marketing, pick up your free copy of Reputation King at reputationking.com. Adam, it's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed having you on the show and sharing some of your deep insights into behavioral marketing and psychological marketing and everything you're doing over there at Kinetic 319. And so where on social can people follow you?
You can follow me on LinkedIn. You can follow us on X as well as on Facebook. We're posting, 3 or 4 times a week if you're ever looking for any advice. And also if you're ever looking for any free audits, that's a great way for us to just take a peek under the hood and see, are you leveraging audiences appropriately? Are you structuring campaigns appropriately? We love to do that. Lastly, we also have something that's literally launching in a press release today called ask-kinetic.com. And this allows for any brand, anyone that really has any type of marketing questions that they may have. You can go to ask-kinetic.com and fill out the form for your 1-3 question, and you get answered either by me or by my team. This is really aimed to try to aid individuals, they're entrepreneurs, they're small businesses, they're mid-sized businesses, or even if they're just looking for larger business questions, we're always happy to help. And so ask-kinetic.com is really our foot forward to helping the community of marketing just in general. So launching today, actually.
Great. Fantastic. That's great advice. Well, good timing. Well, thanks again, Adam. And from Scott and myself, have an amazing day. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the e-commerce traffic and conversion podcast. And we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thank you.